Welcome back, guys. In this video we're going to explore if and switch statements. So first we're going to be covering if statements, and we can use an if statement to execute code only if a given condition is true. Alright guys, let's write some code so I can show you. So as you can see, we have an age variable equal to 20. Now let's say there's a roller coaster that you can only ride if your age is 18 or higher. So let's use an if statement to print a message that says you are old enough to ride only if age is greater than or equal to 18. To create our if statement, first we just have to type if. Next we type our condition. The code inside our if statement is only going to be executed if our condition is true. So for our condition, let's just type age greater than or equal to 18. Now we need to put open and close curly bracket just like this. And in between these curly brackets we put the code we want to be executed if the condition is true. So I'm just going to type fmt.println you are old enough to ride. Now let's just go ahead and run the code. And as you guys can see, the code inside our if statement was executed because the condition here is true. Let's try changing our age to 17. Now let's run the code again. And as you guys can see, nothing was printed. That's because the condition no longer evaluates to true, meaning the if statement's code won't be executed. We also have else statements. And else statements allow us to write code that will only be executed if the condition in the if statement is false. So right now, if the if statement is false, nothing is happening. Let's make our program print a message if the person isn't old enough to ride the roller coaster. So to make an else statement, all we have to do is type else after our if statement just like this. Then we're going to put curly brackets right here. Now we just put the code we want to be executed if the if statement's condition is false in between these curly brackets. So let's just type fmt.println you are not old enough to ride. Now let's run the code, and as you guys can see, you are not old enough to ride was printed. That's because since the condition right here was false, the code in our else statement right here was executed. Let's try changing age back to 20. Now let's run the code again, and as you can see, the code in the else statement is no longer executed since the condition right here is now true. We can also use else if, and else if statements allow us to check for another condition if the condition in our if statement is false. So let's say if your age is 12 or higher, you can't go on the big roller coaster, but you can go on the small roller coaster. So I'm just going to delete this else right here and type else if. Then I'm going to type age greater than or equal to 12. Let's also change this message to you cannot ride the big roller coaster, but you can ride the small one. So what's going to happen is that if this condition right here is false, it will check if this condition right here is true or false. And if it's true, this code right here will be executed. So let's go ahead and change our age to 16. Now let's go ahead and run the code. And as you guys can see, the message in our else if statement was printed. That's because since this condition right here was false, it checked if this condition was true or false. And since this condition was true, this code right here was executed. We can also go ahead and add another else statement right here. So I'm just going to type else curly brackets. And let's type fmt.println you are too young for any roller coaster. And let's change age to 10 so both of these conditions right here won't be true. Now let's go ahead and run our code, and as you can see, it printed out you are too young for any roller coaster. And this else statement's code will only be executed if both of these conditions right here are false. One more thing I wanted to mention is that we can actually add as many else if statements to our if statements as we want, but we can only add one or no else statements. And as you guys can see, I just have some example code right here where we added an additional else if statement. Alright, so now we're going to cover switch statements. And switch statements are similar to if statements. They allow us to compare a value against multiple cases, and the code of the first case that matches the value will be executed. I know it sounds really confusing and you're probably wondering what a case is, but don't worry, you'll understand after we're done writing our code. So we have a weather variable right here, and let's say we want different messages to be printed depending on the weather. And we're going to make a switch statement to do this. So to make our switch statement, the first thing we do is just type switch. Then we're going to put the value we want to compare against our cases. So I'm just going to type weather. Then we put curly brackets right here, just like this. And in between these curly brackets, we're going to put our cases and their code. So let's just type case, sunny, and then just put a colon right here. And then under this, I'm just going to type fmt.println you should wear sunglasses. And let's also type case, rainy, fmt.println you should wear a raincoat. So let's go ahead and run our code, and as you can see, you should wear sunglasses was printed. So what happened is our weather variable right here was compared against the cases in our switch statement. And since the value in our weather variable matches this case's value right here, its code was executed. Let's try changing weather to rainy. So I'm just going to delete sunny right here and put rainy. Now let's go ahead and run the code again, and as you guys can see, this case's code was executed. Now let's see what happens if we change weather's value to something other than rainy or sunny. So let's just delete rainy right here and put snowy. Now let's run the code, and as you guys can see, nothing was printed since the value in weather doesn't match any of our cases. We can actually add what's called a default clause, and the default clause's code will be executed if our switch statement's value doesn't match any of the cases. So let's just go right here and type default, colon, and then right here let's just type fmt.println, I don't know what you should wear. Now let's run the code again, and as you can see, our default clause's code was executed since weather doesn't match any of the cases. So our two cases right here are both single value cases, but we also have multi-value cases. Let's say if weather is snowy or cold, the program should print you should wear a jacket. We can use a multi-value case to achieve this. First let's just type case, and then let's just put cold, comma, snowy, colon. And then in here, let's just type fmt.println, you should wear a jacket. And if weather matches either of these values, this case's code right here will be executed. So keep in mind our weather is currently snowy, and let's just go ahead and run our code. And as you can see, you should wear a jacket was printed. Let's try changing weather to cold. So I'm just going to delete snowy and put cold. And now let's run the code again, and as you can see, the same message was still printed. Earlier we were using if statements, so if you're not subscribed, I'd really appreciate if you subscribe right now. And make sure to like and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos.